Alright, so this is part 2 of the video. I know, like, this is the longest video ever. So I had to create a part 2. So we started talking about gifts and talents, and then she suggested that I write a book, and like she would do the drawing, and we should make it a kids fiction, and it should be a chapter book. And she was so enthusiastic and believed in my abilities. I was like, a chapter book, you know? And so I really wanted to lead by example. So I was like, okay, because I was the one who mentioned gifts and talents. So I was challenged. And so I was like, okay, I don't know if I could do it. And she's like, yes, of course you can. And, remember, it should be a chapter book. And she always loved reading. So she felt, you know, she felt very fascinated by this new project that we were about to embark upon. And so I proceeded. I grabbed my pen. I grabbed my pen and I grabbed a book and I started writing. But then after I got to like the 4th page, because I would normally write a lot, because I think a lot, just like how this video is long. This is my thought process. And but by the time I got to the 4th page, I was blank. I'm like, what the hell? Nothing was coming through. It felt like a documentary. And I was like, I was telling her I ran out. I don't think I could finish it. And she kept on believing in me. Like, she's that type of person. Like, yes, you could do it and stuff like that. So I paused and I was like, I definitely need more words. And so I started reading J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. Now, I've heard about that book for ages, years. But I never attempted it because they were always so thick, and I just didn't think I could finish it. Everybody always gloated over it. And I was like, whatever, yada yada, fanatic readers. But then I grabbed book 5 and I started reading. And I was blown away by J.K. Rowling. I think she's a master in her field. It was after reading her book and stuff like that that I felt an ignition. It's like my story ignited, and I proceeded to writing again. And my type of writing was not conventional at all. I was like, I was mad up in here. Like, there were writings upon scribblings. I wrote down loads and loads of phrases, and then I started to attach them like a puzzle. And as I attached them, my story began to unfold. And, I modified, and then, one day the story just started flowing from my brain, and I had to grab a paper and started writing down the sequences of events, and then I had to put those together. And it took a while because by the time I knew it, I had 36 chapters, despite of everything else that I had to go through. I mean, I couldn't get a job, of course. It was difficult getting a job because I had a social security. I didn't have a social security, and so I had to go to the pantries to get food and stuff like that. Luckily, there were pantries, This is why I say it's different, first world construct, the culture. Because here, when you don't have a home, you can go to a shelter, and when you don't have food, you could get food from the pantry. Now, it might not be what you want to eat every day, and it might not be where you want to sleep, but it is better than being outside, in the cold, and being at the mercy of all types of ill intentions and dangers and all types of stuff like that. So that was an alternative that I got because I couldn't get into any of the HRA programs that are designed to help families who are experiencing difficulties to move from point A to point B. And so, I mean, I grabbed my pen and I was writing every day. That was a very good distractor for me because, you know, the story was unfolding. I'd gotten my daughter into school. Every evening she would come home. We would, you know, read what I came up with. And, you know, I would assist her with her homework in the meantime. And, you know, simultaneously. And so it was a good space to be in. It was a make-believe world and it was happy, you know. And we were coming up with different things, you know, as the story progressed. So I didn't have to deal with what was going on outside until I stepped through the door, you know. The moment I came back in, my mind was somewhere else. But as I mentioned earlier about the cells, what I noticed is that the statement was true. Remember, I was saying we have 50 trillion cells, and all of our cells are always either predominantly in growth or protection. When the cell receives a signal that you want to move in the direction of growth, then it goes there. You know, it moves toward growth. So the fact that I was trying to do something progressive and constructive, I was actually able to finish the book. I actually retrieved the information, you know, from the universe that I needed to finish the story, even though it wasn't flowing in the way that it needed to. It was very difficult because of all of the disconnections going on in my brain. But, you know, I was still able to get there. And eventually that was finished. I couldn't get an editor to help me, you know, for free. I had a little bit of assistance at the library because eventually, you know, I'd become like so inhibited, you know, and so disconnected from everything outside of what was inside of this room because it all felt so wrong outside that I barely even spoke to anyone except for my case managers, you know, when I had to, and my daughter. So I was thinking to myself, I was experiencing so much. I definitely need to make some kind of connection. And I felt that innately in my spirit. Again, because we're social animals, instinctively I knew that this was not how I was supposed to be. You know, because when I was cut off from everything else, you know, I was experiencing even more aches, even though I was writing, you know, and even more pain. And, you know, the issues of undocumentation was filtering in. And, you know, my daughter started understanding the whole, you know, the whole paradigm and the situation we were in and where we were placed, you know, and she started getting concerned because most of her friends were leaving the shelter and we were not moving, even though I told her that it would be temporary. And then she would, you know, be told that this is, you know, we can't because. And so she moved from her happy 10-year-old, gleeful, excited 10-year-old self to a concerned 11-year-old. And, you know, and then over time she started becoming more and more disgruntled and disappointed. So, of course, I started to become more and more affected because it was in this space that this kind of, you know, this kind of, these kinds of emotions were resonating, or these kinds of feelings were resonating, and it made the place very tense, and it brought back a lot of sadness and depression and anxiety and, you know, all of those extra stuff. And so one day when one day I'd seen a flyer somewhere, and it said that the Department of Mental Health was having some kind of session that they were going to pay us to attend. And I needed money, so I decided that I was going to go. And when I went, they had a whole workshop about mental health, and that's when I started to learn that, you know, these were not normal feelings that I was experiencing. And so I was like, wow. They told us about therapists and psychiatrists and whatever, as, you know, like different means that we could take to help us to cope and stuff like that. And so I ended up searching for a therapist because I still had my insurance then. And I found a therapist, and then, you know, while alternating and writing or whatever, I began to attend therapy. And my therapist was very thorough, and he explained a lot of things that I didn't understand. And he referred me to a center called NAMI, that's National Alliance for Mental Illness. And then I started understanding that, you know, I wasn't the only one that was experiencing these kinds of feelings. And it was an issue that lots of minority went through, and these are issues that lots of minority groups experience, of course, because of the, you know, because of where we're ranked and the problems that comes with this kind of level that we're at, you know, through financial depression and all of the other extra stuff that we experience here. And so afterwards, you know, I started educating myself. I started reading a lot. I did a 11-week course at NAMI, you know, where we had a peer-to-peer class or a peer-to-peer group session every week, every Monday. And we shared together, and we learned coping strategies and got tips and stuff like that on how to deal with what we were feeling. And then during that period, I was like, I needed to get out. So I started volunteering at the Brooklyn Public Library, the Washington Irving Library. And I would do that on Saturdays. And then when I was through there, I started volunteering at NAMI in the library there. And there I found it was like heaven for me, because I found books with all the information that I ever wanted about the brain and things I was experiencing and mental health. And this is how I know the terms for the things I was experiencing, because I always wanted to understand what I was going through. And so, you know, my time in the library helped me to get access to the books. And I would take books every time I went, and I would read. I remember a book by Dr. Daniel Amen, The Miracle Brain at Any Age. That really helped me a lot. It helped me to understand so much more than I knew before. And I completed my tenure there because I was doing all of these things, but you know, I didn't have any kind of money coming in, and of course my daughter was getting older and she was attending school, and you know, there were little things that she needed, you know, that we couldn't afford, and we could make so many trips to, you know, Bird of Life, that's a center that assists people who are homeless or who are in need with little things like food, toiletries, and stuff like that. You know, but for toiletries, you could only visit once a month and stuff like that. So I definitely needed to find a way to get the assistance, or get the things that I needed. And so I proceeded to start looking for jobs. I'm like, I need to find something to do. But then when my case manager had introduced me to something, and then, you know, it wasn't going to come through until a month's time. And when I was on the final chapter of my book, I said I was finished, but I was editing. And when I was editing the final chapter of my book, I mean, I was in contact with my child's father, you know, right throughout the period. When I had taken her back, he was aware. He was communicating with her throughout that entire period. During the period in which she was in Texas, he would make like 3-way calls because, you know, he had grown, I had grown, and we were both experiencing a shift. The same time I was experiencing my shift, it was the same time he was experiencing his shift, and we were, you know, we were both on some different kinds of levels, you know. He was enrolled into a rehabilitation program at the place he was incarcerated in, and he was able to do courses in billing and coding, because he was into computers and computer science. So, I mean, we had spoken over things, and, you know, about what used to happen in the relationship, and I got into a space where I had forgiven him. For some reason, I felt like I didn't need to hold any kind of grudge or malice in my heart against him, you know. And he apologized 1,000 times, and sometimes he would blame himself and, you know, say how he hated himself and he didn't understand why he was making the same mistakes over and over again. But when I read The Miracle Brain by Dr. Daniel Amen, I understood a little bit more about how the brain functions, and now I understand even more since I learned about our subconscious programming, and how our thoughts and emotions and feelings, you know, attract the things that we experience, you know, and the understanding of where we are on the ladder and how our experiences affects our perceptions and beliefs and the way that we respond to the world. It makes a world of a difference. So, you know, we had conversations. We had actually become friends, you know, for the first time. Because when we were together, we weren't friends. But, you know, our struggles, I believe, and the things that we had gone through, and then this growth brought us closer together. And the fact that there was a child in the midst, that we both decided we needed to co-parent, because we were both sad that she had to experience all of this, and we both felt responsible, we both felt guilty, we both felt like failures. And so we decided that, you know, we definitely needed, even though our situation was so dysfunctional, we definitely needed to ensure that she felt as much love as we could possibly show her, you know. And so he knew that I was writing a book, and he knew that I'd gotten the medical billing and all of that. But he was like, oh my God, like I definitely would love to be the first person to read that book, you know? And he was proud of my efforts, and I used to encourage his efforts, even though we weren't together. This was the best we'd ever communicated, you know, because we were both in different environments, and we were both, you know, exposed to different people and different things. I had case managers and a therapist. He had counselors and academians. So our minds were both in a different space, and we were both moving in a different direction, a direction of growth. And so I believe that did something for both of us and helped with the shift that we were both experiencing. And so afterward, he had finally passed his exams. He got his billing and coding certificate, and he got his, you know, computer science certificate. He got two of them, and he was very excited. He was like, oh my God, I wish you could see me fix computers now, because I had two computers back home. He would always try to, you know, break them down and fix them back up, and it would just never work. He broke both of my computers eventually, you know, and I blamed him for it a lot. He always felt bad, but when he finally got his certificates, he was like, you should see me now. I'm teaching in here, you know, I'm the person they always call to fix the computers, and I'm doing so much better. And had I been, you know, had I been outside, had I been on the street, I wouldn't be able to do this. You know, I'd have been too distracted, or, you know, I'd have been doing other things, but I wouldn't have been focused enough to complete this. And then we started talking about how everything happened for a reason, and, you know, we both felt that we were accomplished in some way. And then eventually, as I stated before, when I was on the when I was editing the last chapter of the book, my daughter, it was summer, it was August, and my daughter had gone away to camp, because that's something the shelter allows them to do during the holidays. They connect them, sorry, with different camps. So she was, I think, with Lenoa at the time, and she was due to come home. He had called me the Wednesday, and she didn't get to speak to him because she wasn't here, and I told him. And we had this long conversation, and I started telling him everything I was learning about the brain and how it worked and why we were behaving the way we behaved and all of this extra stuff, you know, because I was really excited about the information, and I'm like, I understand now, you know. And he was overwhelmed with the information, you know, but then he said, you know, he received it nonetheless, even though he was overwhelmed. And then we hung up. That was one of the longest conversations we'd had in a while. We were at the point where I told him, listen, you know, you will always hold a place in my heart, you know, even though we're separated. Your kids are always welcome in my home, you know, whenever you get more kids, because my daughter was his only child as well. And I wanted to see him do well, and this is why I continued to encourage him and to motivate him, and because I liked the fact that he was moving in a very positive direction, and I knew that he wanted to be a model, a role model for my child. More than anything else, it was something that he had expressed many times, and he was very, very intelligent, very brilliant young man. You know, when he was himself, like when he didn't have to prove to be anybody else to anyone outside of when we were speaking. He knew when he was speaking to me, he could be completely himself. And so he used to understand things that I didn't know how he understood. But what I learned was that when he was in confinement, most of the times he would read. And so he understand a lot about his history and science and stuff like that, stuff he never expressed, because I guess we weren't in the space to speak about those things, only because we were so distracted by the problems that, we didn't understand and that we projected on each other. So when after he called, I told him that she would be returning on the following Monday, and he should call back. So we ended that conversation. I told him I was almost done with the book, and he was telling me his plans. Like, he wanted to become an entrepreneur. He wanted to become a programmer. He wanted to start his own business, and he had so many dreams and plans and ideas. He had his time had ended, his sentence had ended, and by this time when we had this conversation, he was free, and he had gone somewhere outside of the community. He was staying somewhere outside of the community, but somehow he returned, because in the rural areas of Jamaica it's very slow. He is not used to that. Like, he was feeling so much adrenaline, he just wanted to get going. He couldn't get the resources, the computers and stuff like that. This was 7 years later. And he couldn't get the computers and all of the things that he wanted, to start his new life. And so he ended up going back to the community that we had left, that I left because of the problems we were experiencing. And he was shot and killed, the Sunday following our conversation. And that was really a very devastating blow for me. I mean, I cried and cried and cried. I couldn't understand it. I had loads of questions. I'm like, how could this even happen? Are we just born to suffer and die? Because he'd been through so much suffering, and then he just died, with so much potential and dreams and aims and goals. And I just didn't understand it. And the part that really got to me the most, or the part that was really devastating more than anything else, was the fact that I had to relay this message to my daughter on Monday. I had to pick up my daughter the Monday, from camp. Her father had just died Sunday. I had to pick her up from camp Monday to relay this news. That time I felt like the pain of every mother that I'd ever seen cry in the city, and I'd seen many of them. But I experienced the pain at that time. And I went to pick her up, and I didn't tell her at the same time. I know she was happy to see me, and she was telling me how she wasn't feeling very well, and she had a bad dream that somebody had died and whatever. And the whole time, my eyes were swollen. I was just weak, but I had to develop the strength, you know, to not break down right there and then in front of her. I know it wasn't the appropriate time to tell her. And so I brought her home. I tried to get her something to eat. She didn't want to eat because she didn't feel well. And, I started playing motivational tapes because that's one of the things I do from time to time to keep myself going. And when I told her, she started screaming and wailing. She was like, why me? What did I ever do, 21? And she felt like, wow, what did I ever do to deserve any of this? Why did they have to kill my dad? And it was a very painful experience for her. Very painful because they really loved each other. And, I honestly could not answer any of those questions at that time. And we just cried and cried and cried for the whole day. And, during the night, she broke down. She had a fever. She had a headache. I had to take her to the emergency room, and she recovered. And then afterward, I proceeded to take her to therapy, and we had a counselor here at the shelter, and we had one at her school because school was to begin the Wednesday after she heard this news. So it was a very challenging time for her. And so, after she'd finished crying, because I was crying while she was crying, and then she stopped and she said, Mommy, stop crying. And then she said, you know what? I'm gonna go back to school, and I'm gonna go to college, and I'm gonna do all the things that my dad never got to do. And that kind of moved something inside of me. It was strength. It was hope. And so I proceeded to get her all the help that she needed to get. And I garnered enough strength to finish the editing of my book. I was meeting with my counselor here as well. And I still had my therapy sessions, and my therapist was able to, to help me as well. But a while after that, like shortly after that, I lost my insurance, so I couldn't continue my therapy sessions. I think my visa had expired, and so I couldn't continue my therapy sessions. And I knew I had to keep going. I knew I needed to keep on going. And so I still couldn't get any jobs, So I proceeded to start searching for different avenues. And, I searched up on the internet how to make natural juices. I had started with a friend, a very good friend of mine, but then eventually my demand started increasing. And then I searched up on the internet how to make natural juices on my own. And I eventually learned, and I started putting them in 16-ounce plastic bottles. And, I would go, I'm living in Brooklyn, so I would go to Jamaica Avenue in Queens, and I would go from store to store, barbershops, hairdressing parlors, different stores, and I would sell them to the people there, and they responded positively. No one knew what I was going through, but they supported, and I started earning money from that. My daughter was breaking down in class, momentarily, so sometimes I would have to stop, pick her up from school, and so forth, because she had taken her dad's debt really hard. And eventually I decided, eventually I earned enough money to source 2 editors from Fiverr and Upwork. These are platforms where, freelancers advertise their services for lower rates than everywhere else. I got my editor from Upwork, and I got another editor, and she had her own website. And one was a developmental editor, and one was a contextual editor. And so I was able to pay them to start. That's from the earnings I received, that's from my natural juice earnings. I used the money that I got from there to pay them, and then they started working on the book. The book is still being edited as I speak. A lot of the work has already been finished, but the final steps are being completed now. This happened last year. He was shot and killed last year in August. And so afterward, I decided to build a website in his honor, so that myself and my daughter could transition our greatest grief into something positive. And so we built the website papabearskit.com. And again, I used the money that I earned from my natural juice hustle to pay the people on Fiverr, who are specialized in their area, who are skilled in their area, to build the website. The good thing about that platform is that you don't have to pay a lump sum, and you don't have to do everything all at once, So I would work, and every time I would, make enough to do something else, or, to add something else, then I would pay to do that. And eventually I built the website, and I had my daughter do a little video, and it made her feel a lot better. It's a website that supports fathers and their kids with blog posts and products. I eventually partnered with a few wholesales, and so I'm able to offer holistic products as well, to support fathers, because I believe, we go through, as human beings, we go through so much. I've been through so much. He'd been through so much, And I believe if we take a holistic approach toward healing, then we can actually effect some kind of change. You know, we can we can actually achieve meaningful results because it takes a whole being to raise a child, a functional, a highly functional child that can be successful in society. You know, and they're the future generation. So I have things like supplements, I have things like um, supplements for the brain, supplements for the joints, for the body, for both adults and kids, and a variety of other stuff that offers holistic healing. And I plan to expand. I mean, the first website I built was hacked, and all my files were deleted, so I had to build another one. And of course, this was through my natural juice hustling. But I still plan to expand. Eventually, I plan to start a fund that will assist fathers who want to become entrepreneurs, you know, or fathers who are in the process of creating their own businesses, or fathers who are in the process of furthering their studies. It's in his honor, you know. That fund would be untouched and it would go directly to those who are doing what they need to do, because I believe support and encouragement is so important, especially for our fathers, because sometimes it's so limited. You know, we just expect them to understand, to be strong, and to just do what they need to do. We don't expect them to have feelings or emotions. You know, we don't remember that they're humans at times and they feel just as we do. As women, I mean, sometimes we feel victimized and we're not able to see beyond our own pain or anger. But when you look at life from a different perspective, then it gives you the compassion that you need to move in a different direction, you know? And when we work together, it is so much better than when we're apart, you know? And most times we put labels where we create labels that can be very destructive, and these are labels that never get us the result that we need, because it demeans and it destroys. Labels like deadbeat and good for nothing and worthless, you know? Even though, you know, we may feel that way. And guys sometimes, because they're always treated so rough and they're expected to act so tough, you know. At times they respond with the same anger, and we clash, you know. Sometimes, if we would just take a different approach, the results can be phenomenal. I believe that, you know, and it starts with compassion. And through knowledge and understanding, you receive that, you know, and we can become empowered together. So, my aim is for families to turn inward, you know, and to heal from the inside out, so that we can raise a better generation, you know, or so we can create a better world for our children. And I'm sorry, I'm really getting very emotional. I need to snap out. But yeah, so that is what I did, and um, I also want to expand my natural juicing business. I mean, I would never have expected that, you know, I would be be like I was able to do anything like this, or I was able to make natural juices or anything like that. But my challenges helped me to pull out the stops, and, you know, brought out things in me that I didn't even know was there. You know, I didn't know I was a writer. I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. Eventually, you know, I also want to expand my juicing business, get them in restaurants and bodegas and supermarkets and places like those, because I believe that we need that, you know. Add my touch of nutrition to the shelves, you know, and that has helped to keep me going as well. Fruits and vegetables. I have like cucumber with lemon and ginger, you know, pineapple and mango with ginger, spirulina peanut punch, Irish moss, sorrel, stuff like that. And so I would walk and I would sell those from store to store. And I'm expanding, I believe. I started my positive affirmations. Like, I started doing them on a regular basis. And I must say, it's not the easiest thing ever, you know. But I want to invite you on this journey with me. I mean, sometimes when I'm supposed to visualize my visions or visualize the things that I want, I realize that I've never seen them before. You know, when you're supposed to think about wealth and, you know, like when I'm supposed to visualize the kind of wealth that I need to expand, you know, and how I need to expand. My subconscious mind does not have these pictures. You know, my scope has been so limited. So what I've decided to do was to probably start looking at pictures on the internet and, you know, making a vision board and stuff like that. My, you know, my brain and my mind is in a better space, and my cells are moving more toward growth. I still have my issues, you know, in my whole endocrine system. It's not easy to walk and sell natural juices on a day-to-day basis from store to store and place to place. It's by no means easy. Like, you know, the joints in my bones are worn. You know, the cartilage, sorry, my joints are worn. My endocrine system feels out of place. So I'm in the process of healing, you know, healing this almost destroyed biological wiring. You know, but a good part about it is that we can change the programming, the destructive programming that causes these kinds of results that we attract on a daily basis, and the power lies within us. And I'm never gonna stop. I'm gonna keep trying, and I'm gonna keep trying, and I'm gonna keep trying, you know. And my brain doesn't respond the way I want it to at times, because, you know, whenever you're introducing a new program to the one that's already there, it's not familiar, so it takes a lot more effort. And so at times the feelings are so overwhelming, like the feelings of, you know, struggle to do what is needed is so intense that even though you repeat affirmations and, you know, you fight to find a thought, the feelings sometimes it just dominates. And I'm listening to Abraham Hicks more and more. You know, I've been learning about like the path of least resistance and stuff like that. And other people have different perceptions, but I find that sometimes when I pause, you know, and I redirect, I feel a lot better. But then my circumstances are of such that I have to keep going, because this is how I survive, you know. So I'm still on this level where, you know, I don't have enough resources to relax, and I have goals and dreams that I need to get to eventually when like my book is finished and it gets published. I want to create a Disney animated film. My dreams are superb, you know. They're out of this world. So I definitely have to ensure that my programming catches up, you know, and aligns with my vision, so that it can actually become a reality, so I could attract the, you know, the people that I need to, and the, you know, the things that I need to do, and all of this extra stuff. But I'm glad to share this journey. This is where I'm at. I'm not out yet, but, you know, all is well. Everything is always working out for me, right off the affirmations that I keep telling myself. And eventually, now that I have the understanding of who I am in this society, where we're coming from, where we are, where I am, where I rank, I now have a better understanding of my place and the situations that I've experienced. And I know exactly where I want to go and the effort that I need to place into myself in order to get there. And I pray the same for you. you know, on your journey. I hope that you may align with your own visions. And I hope this video, I know it's been very long, but I felt it was really necessary, you know, to get it out in the universe so I could free myself. And hopefully it has helped somebody else to understand their experiences better. Thank you all for listening, and have a great day.